how do you control an ESP32 microcontroller with Swift? That's what we're going to learn in this video. I'm going to take you on a tutorial of getting set up, and I'm going to show you everything you need to know to get your development environment set up within Visual Studio. Now, this has been a big learning curve for me. There's a lot of setup. There's a lot of things to read. There's a lot of things to download. I'm going to sort of walk you through it so that you can get started with Visual Studio Code and have a development environment that's going to be conducive to actually coding. So I've sort of been hacking things together, and not having code completion feels like a big hindrance. So I'm going to show you how to get started with that, because we've got the LSP code completion support now in Visual Studio Code. And if you've never done that before, you need to do a little bit of setup to get it to work. So what this enables is, as you're typing or as you're looking at things, you can look up the documentation for these different methods. You can just sort of hover over those things and get support. And if you start writing some methods like colors dot, you'll get methods like append, and it will suggest things, which makes it a lot easier to know, does this method exist or does this C function exist? We'll be working with C functions through Swift, and so getting access to those, like in this LED helper file, understanding like what these different symbols are going to be, the LED light strip handle, we can go to definition once we have this all configured. If you don't have this configured, you're going to be trying to find where these files are, and it's really frustrating. That's how I've been kind of working, and now I finally figured out how to set it up. So I'm going to teach you how to get set up, or at least give you pointers so that if you get stuck, you can figure out what you need to do to get to the next step. Now, first off, we're working with Visual Studio Code, and I've got a blog post that I'm going to link down below. So that's what you're seeing over on the left. And I'm going to just walk through this stuff here. So everything we're doing is with the embedded Swift, and it started with Apple sort of introducing this with their Go Small with embedded Swift. Now, they didn't give you a whole lot of details, but they did give some tutorials, and they've got links down here where you can get started with all of that. And I highly recommend downloading their sample code, because that's what I'm using right now on the right side. After that, you're going to want to do some setup. So I'm not going to cover all of the stuff that Apple covers, and the setup is going to be this guide. And there's two things that you really need to do to get started. So if you hit this Get Started, it'll take you to this page. It'll give you all the setup for the development toolchain. You'll need the ESP-IDF tools. If you want to do anything with Matter, you'll need to install Matter, and that is so you can do like HomeKit integration. I'm doing a bunch of LED stuff. I don't know if I'm going to use the Matter stuff, but I've got the ESP32-6C, which is compatible with HomeKit. So that's one of the things that I'm working with. So you just need to follow this guide, and then getting started with like the Blink example. Only if you're on Linux do you need to do this Linux Docker, or only if you want to install it via Linux Docker, not install it natively, do you do this. I'm not going to do that, so I'm just doing the Mac OS approach. So those are the links that I have here. If you get stuck, I've got some helpful links here. So I've got 2 blog posts and 2 other videos on this. This sort of just walks through Apple's guide. So this walks through everything that they do. You can get started with part 1. It's kind of as I go, so I'm learning as I go. I don't know everything, and I've learned a lot from going through this, but you'll learn all of the basics in this tutorial. Now, if you get stuck, or if you want to learn some of the things that you need to watch out for, I talk about that in my next post and video, and I sort of cover those different things for installing the tool chain, going through all that. So I'm going to assume some base level of knowledge working through this. And just getting started with everything. These are the commands that you'll be using. And once you get everything up and running, you'll be doing something like these 3 commands, or you can sort of chain them all together and do them together. But I'm also going to show you an approach that allows you to open up this, I don't even know what they call it, Command-Shift-P, or if you press F1, and you can use the ESP-IDF build flash and start monitor, which will then go ahead and somehow I've hidden my console. What we should see is it should go ahead and build everything, assuming I've got all my settings set up. And I actually took the settings out of this one. Didn't mean to do it on this sample project. So if we go ahead and try that one more time, I might have messed it up. This one's not configured at all. Let me just close and open it. Still learning how all this works. So let's see if we can build it. It's going to be building everything, and what we should see is some output that's happening all around me. Then it's going to flash the device, which just means it's going to install it on the microcontroller, and then we're going to be monitoring it. And if I show you, we plug this in, we now have LEDs, and they are flashing. So they're running through this pattern. I'm just playing around with the LED matrix and animating it. Okay, it's a little bit tricky to show all of that, but that is what our ultimate goal is, and then to enable this development. Now this gets a little bit bright, so I'm probably gonna just unplug this right now and not have my LED panel on, just so that I can keep doing this. Now when you do that, it's gonna be continuously running the monitor. So if you wanna stop that, you do Control and then right square bracket, and that will stop that. All right, so we're going to learn how to get this all set up just like that from scratch, and that's going to be the topic of this video. Okay, so if we jump back to where we are, those are my starting places. I do have a wish list here, so if you want to get any of this stuff, I've just created a wish list of all the stuff that I'm doing. So the board I just held up, this is going to have pre-soldered stuff so that if you want to connect to hardware, you can. That's the one benefit. You don't have to solder it. My dad was in town. He helped me set up the other board that's all connected to the LEDs. And we're going to be using this 5-volt power supply. Currently we hacked together a USB cable. So we just took one of the Apple cables, which is going to give you 5-volt power, I guess, over USB. So that's one approach, but it's not going to... the wires aren't really thick enough to support bigger loads, so it's not as safe as doing something like this. I'm using this panel, and I got some other stuff in here, some connection wires. I've got some breadboards, and then I got some of these parts. And this is the current board down here that I'm using. You got to figure out which one you want. I honestly don't know what I'm doing, so I got this board to start because it looked good, but I don't know. Just pick something. Pick the board that Apple has. This one's cheaper. Or get both and play around with them. I might get an S3 as well because I think I might need faster performance for the calculations that I'm going to be doing. So figure out what you want to do and then just start playing with those boards. Let's work on configuring Visual Studio for embedded Swift. And we're going to start with just the basics. You need to make sure you install Visual Studio Code. So this is one caveat I want to mention. I did a upgrade from, I guess, an Intel-based Mac to this M3 Pro Max Mac that I'm on right now. So I did that migration, and I had an old, I guess, Intel-based version of Visual Studio Code. So if that's the case for you, if you've done an update, you might want to go ahead and re-download the latest version of macOS Visual Studio Code. I was getting a lot of warnings about that, and I didn't realize that I was running the old version. I don't know if this is something new that changed, but like all of a sudden I just started seeing these warnings. So go ahead, download Visual Studio Code, and then we're going to install several different plugins. So I'm just going to bring up Visual Studio Code, and we'll start with that sample project that I created, if I can find it. So this is the code from Apple, but I want to show you my other project, which is missing. Did I close that one by accident? Okay, so I set up this new repository, and we're going to sort of work out of that one, and I'm going to move the... Oh, it opens in place. Interesting. Okay, I didn't expect that. Visual Studio Code also has the open editors. It's a little bit frustrating having that like change what's visible here. So I kind of just like having the current project. And I've included the bare minimum for this project, but I'm not going to talk too much about the project. That's probably going to be another video where I talk about setting up the project from scratch, from what I understand. So if you're interested in that, or how to do your git ignore and stuff like that, I'll have a separate video on that. So we're going to just focus on the plugins that you need. So we're going to go into the extensions, which is going to be Shift Command X to go into extensions, and you're going to need to install C++. Now, another fun fact, I had I think an old version of C++ maybe installed from my previous Mac, and so I had to delete it or uninstall it and reinstall it because I kept getting C++ warnings for integrating with that C and C++ code. So go ahead, install this plugin. That's one of the extensions that we need to grab from Microsoft. And then you're going to look for the Swift for Visual Studio. And I've got links for these, but you can just search for it. And it's going to be the server work group one that you want. So it's this one. And it's 1.11 right now in this version. So you can go ahead and install that. And that's going to give you the SourceKit LSP support. So it's a language server that powers code completion to enable debugging. This is also going to allow jump to definition, peak definition, find all references, symbol search. Without this, you're kind of flying blind with the embedded Swift programming. It's going to give you error annotations, suggestions, fix-its, and some kind of launch configurations. I don't know exactly what all of this means. And then a package dependency view and test explorer view for a unit test. If you integrate unit tests, you'll see this view. And there is debugging support. I haven't figured out how to do the debugger, so that's probably going to be a separate video. I don't know how to debug with embedded Swift. It has not worked yet, so it's probably something else that either works or it doesn't work, and I just don't know how to do it yet. So if you figure that out, comment down below, or reach out to me on X at Paul Soltz. All right, so you'll need this extension. And then the last extension that you're going to need is going to be the IDF extension. So if we go back to extensions and you search for ESP, what does this stand for? It's Expressive IoT Development Framework or something like that. That's what it stands for. You're going to need this chunk of software in order to actually build and run on the device. There's a whole lot of setup stuff. I guess I didn't read the notes, and so that's kind of why I started to make this video, but I realized there's a lot of stuff in here that maybe I didn't set up properly the first time. I was just trying to get something working as quick as possible. So they've got a bunch of instructions. We're going to actually run through their instructions because that's going to be helpful for getting this started. So with those plugins installed, you're going to click the install button. You should be good to go. And next we want to configure the ESP-IDF plugin. Now for this, I feel like I see different views. I'm still not an expert on Visual Studio Code. Like I sort of know how to use it and then I sort of don't know how to use it. I thought there was another window it's a welcome window. This is what I'm looking for. I don't know how you get to this. Is it just a welcome for whatever you're in? Like this is the Visual Studio welcome. Somehow I opened up the welcome window and sometimes it doesn't always pop up. But once you have it installed, they do have links here to install basic use debugging. Probably this one is something I have to dive into to figure out how to get the debugger to work. And then configuration of the extension, I think is where you need to start. So we're going to do that. And if you've already done the setup from Apple, where you went through and you installed, so that would have been this getting started on Mac OS, they walk you through installing the Swift tool chain as well as testing it out and then getting the ESP-IDF. Now this, I think is somewhat big, so it's going to take a little bit of time. It's not just like a one-click install. There's a lot of stuff that you're going to need to do to set that up. Once that's set up, then we're ready to configure it. And so for me, I just did the existing setup. So you're going to click this button and you're going to try and find the setup. So it's going to look for your Python. It's going to look for your tools path and just find everything. So if you click this, it should automatically like set it up. If we try that one more time, that's not what I wanted. Can I get back to that once it's already configured? If I just do configure this again, I wonder if that'll work. What am I doing wrong here? I think I had to pull down the drop down. So this is where you have to do the either F1 key, which is going to be function F1 on an Apple keyboard, or Command Shift P. And there should be a configure. I think it's just a S. No, I don't think that's the one. It's this one, this command. Apparently it's thinking down here. I don't know what it's doing. What if I want to change it? I don't know what that server is, but it's sometimes related to the stuff. So I don't know if I have to quit Visual Studio Code to like bring that button back, or is it not going to come back? Okay, so here's the button again. It's doing stuff down here. And if we do the existing setup, I don't know if this will break my stuff, but if I clear it and then I search for it, so clicking this button, and then we want to find it on my system, and then we're going to enter those directories. So I installed this on my system. If we just look at that real quick, just following Apple's thing. So if I go to my user directory, and then we're going to see this ESP folder. This is in my home directory. So I'm at users Pulsalt ESP. This is where I installed the IDF stuff, and this is where I installed the Matter stuff. So I played around with that. Those are those paths that you need, and then there should be a hidden file in here that it's going to be looking for. So you can just configure these to wherever you set that up and find those paths, and then choosing the Python version that you're going to use. And if you hit install, I don't know what it's going to do. I thought it's going to use my existing stuff, but maybe it's actually going to download stuff. So you'll see something like this. And I don't know if I shot myself in the foot by like resetting everything. Really wasn't expecting it to re-download things. Let's see what happens. Oop. Why did that go away? Oh, it hides? Oh, that's a little silly. Okay. I wanted to copy that, but sure. Okay. So we should be able to build, like if you've got that all set up, at this point, we jump back into the list, you should be configured. The problem is we're not going to have code completion working. And so that's where we have to leverage the code stuff. So you need to download a sample embedded Swift project. And so embedded Swift examples is where I'm starting at for these LED light strips. So this is the one that I've selected, but Apple's got a bunch of other ones. If you've got the Pico, what is this? This is the Raspberry Pi. There's also this STM32, which I don't really know what that is. It's just another piece of hardware. So I'm working on the LED light strip. This works in a strip format, as well as the one I have is a matrix, so that you can run it. So you're going to need to clone this example in order to get this initial code to have something that you can work with. Or you could show one of the examples here, and you should be able to get a Blink demo. But this is going to be a C-based Blink demo. But that might be a good starting point as well. Okay, so I'm just going to close these windows, and now we're going to, I've got this main program, and we're going to look, and we're going to probably see that like code completion is not working. So like if I start typing something with this colors dot, I don't get any suggestions. And so this is how my development has been up until now, and I'm showing you how to configure that. So to configure this, what we're going to do is set up a couple more files. And so you saw that briefly at the beginning of this. You're going to set, in order to build and run, we're going to set the device, and we're going to sort of walk through the guide. So we probably need to do that. I skipped ahead. This is the guide that we need to start going through right now. So this is walking us through some of the stuff that we need to do. So at this point, you should have all of this done, getting the extension. We've got the extension. And then I think you might see this. I didn't see this because I think I've already set that. And we've just done this configure step. So we're now configured with ESP. It's downloaded the stuff that it needs to download. Then what do we have to do? We already have ESP downloaded. Okay, so we saw this. I think we saw that. There's a troubleshooting if you get stuck. And then that's the sample project. So you need a sample project to work with. And then there's this C++ stuff. So it's going to help. We'll set that up. I think before we get to the C++ stuff, we're going to focus on this stuff. So we're going to select the port to use. So if you bring up that option with Shift Command P, and you're going to do, this one is select port to use. So if you click on that and you click it, and your device is connected. So just at this point, you need to make sure that your device is connected and you see the power LED on. So do that. If it's not connected, I was trying to do this earlier and I didn't have it connected. It's totally not working. What we're looking for is something that's probably going to be of the format TTY USB modem 2101, but this number is probably going to be variable. And it should be whatever chip that you have. That's what you're going to need to find. When you do that, it's going to automatically put the port in here. That's going to help you build to that. The other thing you need to do is set the target. So if you come in here and you do ESP, I keep doing this wrong, Command Shift P, that never works once I do that. Let's try it one more time. Command Shift P, and then we're going to configure, what they're asking you to do is to configure the device target. So ESP device target. So you're going to hit enter on this one, and that's going to do something down here. It's also right down here, so you should see the device target right here. It's going to select, whoops, I got to go to daycare in a few minutes. So let's try this again. Device target. It's going to populate this list. You're going to select what you want. So right now I'm working with the C6. Eventually I might work with the S3. So those are two of the targets that I'm probably going to be targeting. And then this, I don't know if this makes a difference which one. It's not clear to me. I was having issues, so potentially reselecting it and choosing this might help you fix a problem. I thought the second one worked, but then the first one worked again, and I don't know if it's because I didn't trash the configuration. So I'll just select the first one in that list. If you don't see either of these, we're going to go back to my guide, and down at the bottom, maybe I need to move this up for more. I'm pretty sure you need to do this on Mac OS. So let me just show you that real quick. So if you type ls and then /, I don't think I've written the whole thing, dev/cu dot, so I've got an error here, *. This will show you all of the connected ports. If you're not seeing anything there, you might have to just do this and just sort of look and see if you see a device connected. So here I see the TTY USB modem. If all you see is a TTY USB modem, you probably don't have the serial port software installed. And so that's where I think you need to install this driver. Probably gonna have to move that up in the blog post. Dev. Okay. So just install the macOS driver. You might need to reboot for it to take effect. I don't think I rebooted to take effect, but they tell you to. So see if you need to. And then what you're looking for is if you type ls and then cu dot something, you should see a serial port device. And what we care about is one that sort of looks like this format down here at the bottom. With that, we'll jump back over and we'll go back into that tutorial, which is this one. And so at this point, where are we? We've set the device, which we can see is down in this list. This is actually going to bring up that menu up top. So that's a little bit confusing, but it goes to the top. Same with this one. It looks like if you click this, it's going to bring you back up top and you just select it or hit escape to not do that change. I don't know what all these buttons down here do. So still learning about this setup. And I don't know what this is, but this I think is for launching it, though you may or may not need to do that. So if you go ahead and let's try this again. We want to do open OCD board configuration. They recommend doing it. I think this is what we already selected. So that's going to select that. There's some kind of project editor. And then we should be able to try to build. So let's see if we can build the project. The first thing you want to start with is just to build your project. You don't want to do the build, flash, start, and monitor. So we'll do one step at a time just to see if you can build. If it's a new project and you haven't built anything, it's going to need to generate everything on the fly. And so it's going to take a little bit of time. And we'll just have a go. I'm losing video frames. So apparently this is very performance intensive, whatever it's doing. So I may be disappearing here. But that's going to go through, build everything. And then what you should see is all of this. So once it's successfully built, if it's successfully built, you'll see this output. And then it will tell you that you can flash the device to continue. At this point, I'm so excited to be here. Hey, what's up? Test. Do I have good frames? I think so. Center that a little bit. I'm so excited to be here. Okay, so at this point, we now can build. The question is, will flashing it work? So we've set up the ESP-3260 and we've set up, hopefully you've got your COM port selected. So the next test is we're going to do Command-Shift-P and we're going to see if we can flash and monitor the device. We could just do the single step. And if you do this and it doesn't work, that means we still have a little bit of work to do to get this to work. Okay, so mine is just sort of sitting here. So you had the successful build, but now it's like in this limbo state of it's doing something at the bottom. Now, this is where I find Visual Studio confusing because I have to look down here and then I have to look up here. It's asking me for a method. And I think for this one, we're going to want UART, but your device might vary. You can try all three of these. I don't know what actually helped. This is the confusing part for me, but I was able to get it working with UART. I have those drivers installed. So if you don't have those drivers installed, make sure you do that one step that I have in my blog post and maybe reboot. If we do that and we can flash, great. Now we have a consistent way where you can edit something. So we can go in and we can print something, but we still don't have code completion. So we'll just print out changing colors. Okay, so I don't have code completion yet. That's what we're going to work on next. But what we could do is we can stop this. And actually, I don't know if we can let's just try it. I haven't tried this enough to know. So if we try this, does it stop it? And so what you should see is you should have your LED lights, hopefully. Okay, so this is where it's hung. So you can't just do this. So don't do that. I think might have messed something up here. So definitely you're going to have to stop it. There's a list of them somewhere. Apparently there was multiple terminals or something. So I had to do, let me get my keyboard. Oops. Okay, so down here, when you're in your editor, if you do a control right square bracket, that should stop it, and then you'll gain control. You can do the same type of thing over here. So if I were to write these same commands, I can write idf.py. This is going to build. And then if that's successful, we can go ahead and run it. So you'll see that the build was complete to Flash, run all this. I don't love that there's a ton of output on how to do this, but I guess it's helpful to see this once you know what you're doing. To me, it's like all gibberish. So I'm going to do idf.py. We can do build Flash. And if we don't want to monitor, we don't have to monitor. That's only if you want to see the output. But if we go ahead, build Flash monitor, this is exactly what this should be doing, though it might be doing something a little bit different. And for some reason we're not seeing, did I not save this? We should be seeing changing colors, but for some reason that's not printing. So I'll stop it with control right square bracket, and then we'll try that one more time, see if it builds. Let's make sure I'm in the right, I'm not in the right project, that's why. This keeps getting bigger and bigger when you change the font. It's a little annoying. Okay. So if we run that command, idf.py, build Flash monitor, we'll do all three chains together. It's going to build, it's going to install it on the microcontroller, and then it is going to monitor it. Okay, so we see it's changing colors, and it's going to do that 16 times because that's what I'm asking it, which is essentially one row of colors. I wanted to flip-flop the colors potentially, so I'm doing 16 colors at a time, and that's the output that we see. Okay. All righty. Okay, so there's one step that we missed, which was the C++ stuff. I think we'll come back to that so that we can hopefully see that working. I think what we'll see, and I don't remember if this is going to happen here. I guess we'll find out. If we get any kind of errors in some of these headers like this, it's not finding certain things. That's going to be a search path issue, and we're going to go ahead and fix it up. So this is this optional step. Let's see if we can actually do it now. So this takes you to another thing, and we're basically going to copy something similar to this. I'm just going to copy my version. So we're going to go back to my blog post, and let's play around. Where do I put this way down at the bottom? Now I take that back. We're going to just go in order so that we can get code completion working with Swift. So at this point, we've done everything we need to do for the most part for the setup, and you should be able to build and run from Visual Studio Code, which would be a game changer versus having to always come back to the terminal. The terminal's not terrible. Like, you can just hit the up arrow and you can rerun that last command, but having a keyboard shortcut that allows you to get into it over on this side is super convenient. Okay, so that's that. Now let's enable the Swift LSP code completion. This one, I don't fully understand exactly what's going on here, but we're trying to set up some paths and we need this special settings file. So if you don't have the settings file, if it wasn't already created from any of the previous steps that we've done, or you didn't do those steps, now is the time where you need to create this settings file under a .vs code thing. Hopefully you have it, and we're just going to be modifying this. So you might have some entries. So I had just this entry when I started. Now we're going to go ahead and we can either use your toolchain, the full path, or you can use the Swift latest. If you're installing other toolchains, that might throw off the build, so it might break things. So having a static development snapshot might be a better bet, depending on if there's breaking changes and you don't want to commit to them yet. This is something that you can always modify later. We are going to grab these lines of code, and I'm just going to copy this over. I think I have to get rid of that extra comma. I don't think we have a trailing comma with JSON, so this is a problem. So I'm just going to copy everything up until that, and we're just going to paste it right here, separate it. These are going to be our Swift environment variables, and hopefully it likes us. So this path you're going to have to change. So we're going to go over and we're going to echo our tool chains. And is it just tool chain? Tool chains. That's just going to be the version you're on. Sorry, I take that back. We are going to do the ls approach just to find the folder. So it's going to be under your dev folder, and then, sorry, library developer. And then what we're looking for here is the toolchains folder. So just do this. I've got 2 toolchains installed, and then I've got the latest. You can use any of the 3. I'm just going to use this one for simplicity. So I have a known toolchain that this is going to default to. And we're just going to copy this path, and wherever you see this toolchain, you're going to replace that with your toolchain. So I'm just going to replace it in both locations with the latest toolchain that I have on my system. Okay, so with that, I think we can just build. And so if we just execute a build now, we should be able to get this to work. Now, I'm going to try and build from within Visual Studio Code. So we're going to just build the project, see what happens. I hit cancel. Okay, should be okay on that. And now, no, I don't see it working. So let's. What am I missing here? Okay. When I set this up last time, I thought that was the only thing I needed to do to get it to work. We're going to go ahead and set up the C++ and just see if that helps. And sort of move from there. Okay. So where am I? That didn't work like I expected. And so there's probably some other thing that I'm not setting up. So we're going to go back, and I think we're going to jump ahead in my blog post, and we're going to cover the fixing the C++ search paths. I've got a chunk of code that's been updated. So the other one doesn't have this GCC path. So we're going to go ahead and add this file and see if that helps. So we're going to go up to the VS Code path. We're going to do a new file, and we're going to do a C_CPP properties.json, press enter, and then we're going to paste this in. Now, it's going to complain about this path for Windows. If you're working so that this should work on both Windows and Mac, you're going to want to keep this. If you're not going to work on that, you can get rid of this line if the squiggles bothers you, because this symbol is not defined in our working path. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of it. But you can choose to keep that if you need to support Windows on your system. Okay, so let's try and do another build. And you can type IDF py build down here, or you can use the command and it should build. We might need to actually clean. So actually that could be our problem. So let's just, if we build this, does that impact anything? Now, what I'm expecting to see is that once we get these paths up, we should now see that some of these squiggles that we were seeing before in the bridging header file are going to go away. The bridging header is how we're going to expose C code to Swift, and that's how we're leveraging the LED light strip. And now we should be able to jump to source with a command click on that symbol. And this is telling us, consider updating your compile commands. I keep seeing this issue, so I don't know if one of the systems is missing, but we don't really need to go that far. This will have all of the API documentation that we need for the LED stuff, which is super helpful. Okay, so that's the LED light strip. Let's do a full clean of the project, and to do that, not sure what's going on down here. Debug terminal. We're missing a comma. That's probably not helping us. That's probably my problem. I forgot to put the comma in. This looks a little bit different than how I wrote it before. So if you're copying this in and you don't have a comma, that was the problem. Just make sure that you have the comma. And let's see if that actually fixes our stuff. So I'm going to try and do Command-Shift-P, and we're going to go ahead and build the project. It was built. And then let's go into LED light strip and see if is code completion, any of this stuff working? No. Okay, so let's clean and see if that helps. So to clean, you're going to do idf.py clean. And now our next build is going to take a while. So you can do this in either terminal. I just don't know. I'm trying to figure out where unless I have multiple tabs, where my terminal goes. Okay, there it is. So it is this. So you're going to see a Ninja task, it looks like, in Visual Studio Code, which is right above me. And then, I don't know if I'm in the way, we're going to see the Python task, and then we're going to see the ESP-IDF monitor. So If you want to get back to this so that you can write some commands, that's how you're going to do that. We'll just go ahead and build from here just to see if that helps us at all. Doing the same thing that we can do in here. And then I'm going to look through while that's building because it's going to take a while. We're going to take a look at configuring VS Code for Swift development. We've got the extension, create a new project. We're going to have an existing project. Okay, so that successfully built. Anything changed? Let's look in our build folder. We are looking for compile commands. I mean, it's here, but I don't know if all the stuff that we need is inside of it. There's a chance that I've messed something up on this configuration. So let's just sort of look through this. If one of, let's double check this path. Might be a good starting point. Okay, and then just like sanity check. Not working. Let's see if I copy in my previous one, if I mess this up. And we'll do Command-Shift-P and build the project. Oh, that might be it. I didn't see this. Maybe you've been staring at this error, but behind me is an error that says changing the Swift path requires Visual Studio to be reloaded. I knew that quitting sometimes and opening it up again sometimes fix things. Let's see if that fixed it. Not sure. Let's build it. Yes. Okay. Either quit or reload or relaunch or something. And if I go back and I undo that last change I made, I'll go back to my previous code. Apparently, because we closed it. Okay, so find your path again. So this is just, if you do ls library developer tool chains, you're going to grab whatever this path is. So I'm going to try and use the latest snapshot of Swift so that I'm not on the super old one that I was on earlier, because things have changed. So we're getting bug fixes and stuff like that. And I'm just going to paste that in here, save it. And then, okay, so my microphone is blocking my line of sight to this bottom corner, so that doesn't help. It's now saying that we need to reload extensions, so let's reload the extensions. And I'm assuming then if you do a build, so Command-Shift-P, build your project, you should see that this builds successfully. And now if you're hovering over like insert, you're going to get code completion. If you're not getting code completion, you're going to have to Google whatever error you're seeing. I have seen some issues around that. But if you are, now you can just start typing stuff. It's going to suggest variable names. So it's suggesting color or colors. And we get access to these APIs. So we can see the different things that are available. The same is true for your own custom types. So down here, we've got an LED strip where we're setting the pixel. If I insert a new line, LED strip dot, we're going to see the three methods that I have. I have clear, refresh, and set pixel. So you have to set the pixel first. And then every time you want to update, you're going to have to call refresh. If you want to clear everything, that's what the clear command, I believe, is for. That resets all the pixel colors. So I am just setting all the pixels, and then we're doing a refresh, and we're going to see those changes take effect on the LED panel. So now if I plug in my 5-volt power using this USB cable, and we go ahead and let's just make one change where we make these rows bigger. So we'll do 6 rows in my example, and I go ahead and run. So build flash and start your monitor. Currently, we're seeing this configuration, and if all goes well, we'll see it stop animating once it's installing the new firmware. And then we should see bigger, chunky animations, which is what we're seeing here. So that's doing all this. Now I'm going to have this sample code available. So if you just go to the blog post, you'll be able to get a download, or if you look in the bottom show notes, I should have a sample project. Let me just make sure I put a comment there. And then in my next video, I'm going to discuss the sort of building blocks of an embedded Swift project, all the different files that you need to understand now that we have something working. So this is my new, I basically took the code from Apple's sample, and I'm putting it in my own repository so I can start morphing it and playing with it outside of their repository. Okay, so we'll talk about all of these different files in that new video. And until then, now you should have a working project with code completion, as well as the ability to jump to definition or go to declaration. So if we jump to definition on set pixel, this takes us to our ledstrip.swift file. And if we dive a step lower into the C code, we can right click on this. We can even get the comments to appear, and we jump to definition on this. It'll take us right to the documentation so that we can understand how this works. If you want to understand how the refresh works, This refreshes the memory of colors to LEDs. And this says, after updating the LED colors in memory, a following invocation of this API is needed to flush colors to strip. So that's what's going to ultimately get your colors on the screen. Thanks for watching. When you're working in Visual Studio, look on the top, look on the bottom right. If you see something pop up there, see if you can fix that issue. Sometimes it's a refresh when it's an extension change. So just be mindful of that. I totally missed that. And my microphone was like covering that warning. You probably saw it while I'm sitting here like wondering what's going on. And I hope this helps you. If it does, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll talk about how to create a starter project and the things that you need to consider. I'm still learning, so I'm just sharing what I understand, and that might change as this evolves, since this is not released yet. This is all experimental and subject to change. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.